Namaste and welcome back to the video course on watershed management. In module number 5 on the topic of socio-economic aspects of watershed management, in lecture number 20, today we will discuss about socio-economy, private sector, participation and gender issues. Some of the important topics covered today include the socio-economical aspects of watershed management, economical assessment of watershed projects, private sector participation, role of NGOs and gender issues. Some of the keywords for today's lecture: socio-economy, economic assessment, NGO, gender issues. So, as we discussed earlier, so when we deal with the watershed management plans, we have to see the social aspects and the economical aspects. So, both are, say, we have to consider an integrated way as we discussed in the last lecture. So, as far as we say the watershed management plans are concerned, it is not just a the physical environment which we are dealing, that means the area which we are dealing or the various resources which we are dealing, but also we have to deal with the human environment or we have to deal with the people living within the watershed. So, that way we have to see their social upliftment, social related issues, then the economical issues, cultural issues, all those things we have to consider when we deal with the watershed management plans. So, the socio cultural and economic aspects influences the type of finally that we have to adopt by the land users as well as the rate of adoption and success of adopted technologies. So, for example, when we are preparing a watershed management plan, so that the area there will be number of private landowners within that watershed. So, whatever plans we make, the individuals or the individual landowners should adopt the plans and then they have to implement it. So, this adoption will take place if it is properly designed, if it is economically viable, if it is socially needed, and if it is, say, culturally also the background is there. So, that way we have to see that the rate of adoption and success depends upon the adopted technologies what we use for the watershed management plans. So, major socio cultural and economic factors include the land tenure, capital, labor, perception, beliefs and gender. So, here you can see that land tenure. So, land tenure, say, as far as watershed management is concerned, whether land belongs to a private owner or the public or the government or with what type of land is, and that, say, the land is, say, for example, leased for, say, so many years or what kind of tenure is there. So, land tenure is very important. So, it is the land tenure is the terms and conditions on which land and other natural resources, say, example, trees, water, mineral resource, etc., and are held and used. So, sometimes, say, the land or the various resources within the land will be leased. So, accordingly we have to see the land tenure. And then the next is capital. So, we need a good amount of money to start any watershed management plans. So, how much money is available, what kind of activities can be done. So, accordingly we have to see. And then the next one is labor. So, labor is one of the important part of any watershed management plans, since to construct various structures or various water harvesting plans we need labor. So, how we can get the labor, whether locally the people will help, the stakeholders themselves will help. Then perception and beliefs. So, when we are dealing with the watershed management plans, say, for example, if you are going to intensively change the land use pattern, then we may have to deal with many things like we may have to change the location of some religious structures, and then the people have their own belief in many aspects. So, all those things we have to consider. Then gender issue means, say, most of the time the water is a main subject for the women. So, we have to get their feedback, their opinions as far as the watershed management plans are concerned. And when we deal with the various resource management, say, we have to deal in such a manner in which they are owned, accessed, controlled and used. So, whatever we are doing within the watershed, say, it should be planned in such a way that, say, there should be an ownership feeling for the stakeholders or the people within the watershed, and then, say, there should be easy accessibility should be there, and then they have to, the local people have to control, and then they have to maintain it. So, generally when we deal with the various issues, say, 4 resource management regimes we have to deal. say as far as the land tenure or related land issues are concerned. So, first one is private regime, second one is state property regime, third one is open access, that means non property regime, and fourth one is common property regime. So, here say you can see that when we deal with a particular watershed or particular area, so some of the land will be say will be belong to the private people or the private landowners. Then some say part will be belongs to the government, which we can call it as public land, and then some part we can all the people have access like a forest area. So, like that we can say we can classify, and then accordingly when we prepare the particular watershed management plan, say we have to consider the socio-economic aspects of each regime, and then we have to make appropriate plans. So, that way we can see that whenever we deal with watershed management plans, so this most of the watershed management plans are very much capital intensive. So, so that way we have to see that how much money is available, what are the sources of money available, whether how much money can be obtained from government sources or if any external funding, and then say how much money can be spent by the concerned stakeholders. So, all those issues we have to deal when we discuss about the socio-economical aspects of watershed management. So, unless land users have sufficient resources, they cannot engage in successful watershed management. So, if the total fund is not coming from government or other agencies, say and if the individual landowners they do not have sufficient funds, then they will not engage in watershed management plans. So, for example, labor is required for the construction of water harvesting structures. So, if you have to construct a check dam, or if you have to construct a nala bending or all that kind of structure, we need a labor, we need material. So, for all those things we need to get funding from either government sources or other funding agencies, or say from the landowners itself. And then as we discussed, the labor is very costly affair, and then it is most of the time beyond the reach of majority of the land users. So, therefore, resource disadvantaged land users will most likely not engage in meaningful watershed management. So, we have to see the labor issues accordingly. And then as we discussed in the last lecture, the most of the watershed management plans we have to couple with the poverty alleviation. So, poverty is usually defined as one's inability to meet their basic economic needs for clean air, water, food, shelter, and health care. So, that way say when we link the watershed management plans with the poverty alleviation, various schemes we have to plan with the social perspectives, but of course, integrating with the economical perspectives, then and then of course, also the ecology or environmental perspective, then that kind of watershed management plans will be acceptable to the public or acceptable to the community, and then they will say implement it, or they will cooperate in the implementation, and then its uses and the maintenance. So, that way we have to see the various socio-economical aspects as far as the watershed management plans are concerned. Then when we discuss about the socio-economic aspects, major say as far as especially in third world countries, the major watershed problems which we can prescribe in say here say in 4 terms. First one is low productivity. So, agricultural productivity is concerned, it will be very low, since say water will not be available for irrigation, and then say people do not have money for buying fertilizers and other things. So, that way the agricultural productivity or animal husbandry productivity will be much less. So, low productivity. So, when the low productivity is there, then the income will be to the people, low income will be there, and then of course, the after effect will be low savings. And then if we ask the people stakeholders to invest for say for example, further development plans or for the construction work, then there will not be money for investment. So, that way low investment. So, that way when we look into all these aspects, there is the environment and poverty nexus, that means say all those things come together. So, poverty stricken people are critically environment dependent. So, the for the people who do not have sufficient money for say various activities, so they depend the environment for various things like their livelihoods and then all other activities. So, like people will be looking say for fish, timber, fruits, charcoal, food, medicine, etc. So, all the poverty stricken people will be looking to environment like forest or the river or various resources available within the watershed. And then next aspect like labor and watershed management is concerned, labor is another vital component in watershed management. So, it is actually the most limiting constraint of small holder land users in the adoption and sustenance of watershed management techniques. So, say to construct various structures, water harvesting structures or other structures within the watershed area, labor is required. So, that way, and labor is very expensive. That way that is one of the constraint which say through various schemes government agencies or other NGOs or other funding agencies can help the individual landowners. Labor is required for establishing tree nurseries, planting the trees, constructing terraces, manuring farms, constructing of check dams, etc. when we discuss within the perspective of various watershed management plans. When we look into again back to the say when we review what are the problems, what are related issues, how we can sort out this with respect to economical aspects of social issues. So, we have to frame methodologies for effective watershed management with a special reference to the economical aspects and the social consideration. So, from the discussion so far or the slides which we have seen so far, we can see that there are various issues related to social aspects or economical aspects. So, we have to see all these aspects when we develop appropriate watershed management plans. So, the watershed management policy and legal environment we have to frame appropriately. So, we have to look what are the fundamental policy and legislative weaknesses associated with the contemporary watershed management programs with a special focus on economic and social considerations. So, when we review or when we look into the various watershed management plans proposed by federal government or central government or state governments, and then when the implementation comes, we have to see what are the problems, say what are the weaknesses associated with the present schemes, so that all the social aspects or the environmental aspects or the economical aspects are considered in an appropriate way. So, that way we can see that most of the policies, existing policies lacks focus in terms of classifying projects with regard to site specificities, and that it plays insufficient attention to monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. So, since each watershed has its own characteristics and then each location the people needs will be different. So, that way even if we frame a common policy or common say watershed management policy and legal environment, it will be very difficult to deal with the individual requirement or individual watershed basis requirements. So, we have to see whether we can say decentralize these kinds of say norms and policies maybe to the panchayat level or to the grassroots level. So, where the issues can be, say the local people can present their own problems and then they can come up with particular schemes for the as far as watershed management is concerned. So, then legislation is often absent or inadequate with respect to the interdepartmental collaboration, funding allocation, sharing of resources and decentralization of authority. So, we can see that when we look into say for example, Government of India structure, say Agriculture Ministry is there, Ministry of Water Resources is there, Ministry of Environment is there. So, when we deal with since many of these ministries or agencies are dealing with water or dealing with watershed related projects. So, we can see that there are no interdepartmental collaboration. So, whatever proposed by Ministry of Environment, there may be inadequacies when we say look into the perspective of Ministry of Agriculture. So, that way the issues lot of issues are there. So, we have to integrate each of the departments or the ministries or various activities, and so that by considering the economical aspects, social aspects or environmental aspects, and we can frame say appropriate policies or appropriate legal environment as far as the watershed management say. So, this will be generally possible say at local level than the state level or central level. So, that way we have to frame the legislation. And then again there are number of issues when we deal with this say the watershed related issues say within the perspective of economical issues or social issues. So, we have to review the existing legislation and formulate new legislation to address policy issues such as interagency collaboration, decentralization of authority and sustainability of resources. So, we have to see that the resources are sustainable like water, land or the various other resources within the watershed, they are sustainable, and then there are appropriate collaboration between the various agencies or various departments. So, we have to frame the appropriate legislation and then this should be in a decentralized way, so that that can be easily say implemented for in a particular watershed considered. So, we should have appropriate watershed management plans. So, we have to look into what are the major issues associated with contemporary watershed planning methods with a special focus on economic and social consideration at the national, state or the district and watershed and local levels. So, all at various levels we have to see the various problems and then come up with appropriate plans as far as when we deal with economical, social or environmental issues as far as watershed management plans are concerned. And then also we have to see that investment should be made in information collection, national database infrastructure and easy data access. So, if anybody wants to study particular watershed or anybody want to prepare particular watershed management plans. So, they have to whatever data collected by various departments should be easily accessible, easily available to the concerned researcher or concerned agencies, so that there should be say the information whatever collected should be available and then it should be easily accessible to the particular agencies or NGOs who are going to implement some particular watershed management schemes. And then also we have to see that the schemes which we are developing is cost effective. So, cost effectiveness should be emphasized and then proper attention paid to indigenous knowledge. So, we can see that when we, as we already discussed, say when we deal with watershed management plans, we cannot say have say same type of plans from one watershed to another watershed. So, we say for particular area, for particular say river basin, indigenous requirement will be there which is relevant to that particular area. So, indigenous knowledge also say relevant to that area, we have to look into when we discuss or when we frame watershed management plans. So, that way when we deal with watershed management plans or when we have already implemented for the implemented watershed management plans also, we have to do economic assessment. So, we have to see that whether the project is economically viable and then whether the project will be success, whatever the capital investment or money spent, whether those are recoverable in various terms. So, economic assessment of watershed project is very important. So, the aims of most of the economic assessments are whether are economic benefits greater than cost. When we implement any type of project, we have to see that the benefits are greater than always the cost. So, whatever budget we keep for the particular project or particular area, so what will be the impact of that budget or that investment. So, that we have to see. So, whether that will be the positive impacts and then after few years the benefits will be coming up and then whether that benefits will be more than whatever the cost. So, that we have to see, and will project increase economic stability. So, when we deal with the people of the particular watershed or the economical aspects, we have to see that whatever schemes we are implementing, whether that will increase the economic stability of the considered people within that watershed, and whether the project is attractive to private entities. So, as I mentioned, when we deal with a particular watershed, a number of private land owners will be there. So, we have to see that say if we come up with certain plans which are economically attractive to the private entities, then only private people or private landowners, then only they will implement it. And then long term work of intergeneration benefits. So, we have to see that the system is sustainable, and then benefits are there for not only for the present generation, but say number of generations or coming generations, and then multiple use and multi products. So, whatever we are implementing, say multiple use should be there. Say for example, when we are implementing a check dam for a particular watershed, the water available say we can use for the domestic purpose, agriculture purpose, or the ecological purposes, or the say there what other kinds of various purposes what we can set, or multiple uses are possible or not. And then we have to see the externalities, say what kind of direct impact, and then what are the type of indirect impact when we look into economical assessments. Then spatial distribution of costs and benefits. So, when we are implementing particular plans, we have to see that all the people within the watershed are getting the benefits. So, we have to see that the costs also should be shared by the various landowners or various people, similarly the benefits also. So, most of the time it is not so easy procedure to quantify all those things. So, there are number of difficulties in the valuation process and qualification as far as the economical assessment of the particular watershed is concerned. So, now say when we discuss with the economical assessments, say why economical assessment is required. So, as I have already mentioned, so we have to see that the money which we are spending, whether it is recoverable through the various benefits which are accruing with respect to that project. So, economical analysis, we have to focus on net benefit to the society, and its purpose is to determine whether investment is justified on economic efficiency basis. So, when we identify that the benefits are more than the cost, or benefit cost ratio is more than 1, we say that the project is economically efficient. So, we have to see the economic efficiency of the particular project. And then economic analysis needed to verify that the project yields net benefit to the society as a whole. So, whatever we are implementing as the watershed management plans, we have to see that that will be useful for the total community of the watershed. And then economical appraisal considers market traded goods and services, but also attempts to value them in terms of society's true willingness to pay. So, when we are implementing, say for example, if through construction of a dam or check dam, say for a particular watershed, if water is available, and then the cost associated, whether the people are ready to pay for that. So, we have to see the economic appraisals within that perspective. Then economic analysis also adds in benefits costs of goods and services that are not traded in the marketplace. So, we have to see the various benefits which are not directly in terms of market analysis, but indirect benefits also we have to see when we go for economical assessment. So, then now let us see what are the way we have to consider an economic appraisal. So, in this slides you can see the various things to be considered. Economical appraisal are listed. So, economical appraisal should include following basic steps. So, the questions like what is the project trying to achieve, towards what objectives is it aimed. So, what are the objectives for that particular project? Then what problems is it trying to overcome? Say, is it trying to overcome the water availability problems or the land degradation problem or sedimentation issues? So, that way we have to see. Then main alternatives for achieving the objectives, say for each problems there will be number of alternatives. So, we have to see the important alternatives, and then we have to do cost benefit analysis, and then we have to see the maximum beneficial schemes. So, main alternatives for achieving the objectives we have to see, and then we have to see its costs and benefits. Then alternatives for achieving the objectives. So, say what are the alternatives available? So, like definition and quantification of the physical inputs and outputs involved for the particular project. Then developments of tables which show inputs and outputs over the time. So, we can make tables for, say, what will be the input for particular project and what will be the output coming from by implementation of that project. So, that way we can have tables, and then we can compare. Then determination of unit values, say for both the market and economic for inputs and outputs over time, say per ton, agricultural products, what will be the price available, or to produce, say, per ton per hectare, say what will be the cost involved. So, like that we have to see both the market terms and economic terms. And then development of value flow tables showing total values of benefits and costs estimated to occur over life of the project. So, when we deal with watershed management plans, so the plan what we are implementing for a particular watershed, that may be for 50 years, 100 years, like that. So, we have to see for that the total years, say how the benefits are coming over the life of the project, say whether it is increasing or decreasing, and then say cumulative effect what will be there. So, all those things we have to economically analyze with respect to the particular watershed management plans. So, we need to have an effective economic appraisal for the particular watershed project. So, now let us look into what are the important factors and limits of economic assessment. So, when we deal with the economic assessment of watershed projects, so the project is worth, say what is the worth of the project. So, like what is the project feasibility and attractions. So, we have to see that the project is attractive to the people, and what are the feasibility of that particular implementation of the project. Then what are the risk factors? Once it is implemented, what will be the problems, what are the environmental problems, whether how much land will be flooded, say if we construct a particular check dam, or whether the soil erosion problems will be more when we go for particular farming or that kind of things. Then project design and various alternatives. So, we have to see within terms of the project work what are the various alternatives, and then its design, and then what are the costs and benefits, and then what are the limitations with respect to the economic assessment for particular watershed projects. Say we cannot say quantify all benefits, say there are number of direct benefits and number of indirect benefits will be also there. So, all those things we cannot quantify. So, those are some of the limitations as far as the economic assessment is concerned. And then also say what kind of assessment we can do, that depends upon what kind of data is available. So, we need a huge amount of data when we deal with the economic assessment, since we have to see the cost with respect to various implementations, and then what are the benefits, like direct benefits, indirect benefits, future benefits, like that. So, some of the major techniques used for economic assessments are listed here. So, we can see that if that project is not there, then what will be the problems, and once we implement the project, what will be the economical improvement or economical say benefits. So, that way with and without project approach we can study. So, that is one of the major technique used say when we deal with economic assessments. Then we can see, say next one is discount, say how much discount, say for the particular capital investment is done, then say for the coming years what kind of discount we have to put. So, discount rates we can calculate or future values we can find. Then the last one is cost and benefit analysis. So, as I mentioned, say for particular projects which we are going to implement for a say for a watershed, what will be the cost and then what will be the immediate benefits or future benefits. So, we can do an extensive cost and benefit analysis. So, then say we can see that say in all these cases we have to collect all the data, what our particular methodology is required, and then we have to analyze this data and then come up with say particular methodology can be used, like if the project is there or if the project is not implemented, what will happen, or we can identify what will be the discount rate which we have to keep for the particular investment, or we can calculate the benefit cost ratio with respect to the implementation of that project. So, now let us discuss in detail about some of these techniques which are used for economic assessment. So, we can calculate the net present value or net present worth for that particular investment. So, in the case of this net present worth, we are trying to determine present value of net benefits of a project. This net present worth is equal to present value of all benefits minus present value of cost. So, that will be the net present worth for that particular project. So, we can identify what will be the present value of cost, say this year, next year or coming years, what we have to spend for that particular project. So, we can identify what will be the present value of those costs, and then say the benefits are concerned, what will be the immediate benefit and then future benefits. So, for say for 10 years or 20 years, whatever the period expected life period of that project. So, we can identify the present value of all benefits. So, we say that project is acceptable if this net present worth is say 0 or positive. So, when benefits minus cost is greater than or equal to 0, the project is acceptable. So, this net present worth we can calculate using this formula given here. So, where net present worth is equal to sigma T is equal to 1 to n Bt minus Ct divided by 1 plus R to the power T, where Bt is the benefit, Ct is the cost in year T, Bt is the benefit in year T, R is the discount rate and N is the number of years which we consider for that particular project. So, that way we can calculate the net present worth of the project, and then say for various alternatives, say what we propose for that particular project or particular watershed, we can calculate this NPW net present worth and then identify which will give more benefits. So, accordingly we can choose that alternative. Say so, to compare several alternatives, we can say calculate this net present worth, and then we can make a table and then we can rank it. So, accordingly the decision maker can choose particular project or particular scheme which will give maximum net present worth. So, this net present worth is one of the technique used in the economic assessment of watershed management plans or watershed projects. So, then next methodology as far as economic assessment is concerned, it is so called benefit cost ratio. So, the ratio, it is the ratio of present value of benefits to present value of cost. So, that can be calculated by using this equation, B by C is equal to sigma T is equal to 1 to n Bt divided by 1 plus R to the power T divided by sigma T is equal to 1 to n Ct divided by 1 plus R to the power T, where Bt is the benefit in that particular year, Ct is the cost in that year, then R is the discount rate which we have to assign, and n is the number of years which we consider. So, as I mentioned already, we will say that a particular alternative or particular scheme for a project or for a watershed project, we say that it is economically feasible when the benefit cost ratio is more than 1 as given here. So, if we plot the benefits on the x axis and costs on the y axis, so we can say that the point of effectiveness is when this particular point where the at least the benefits is equal to the cost or benefits exceeds the cost. So, that we can say that the particular project is economically beneficial or it is a project is acceptable say by considering this benefit cost ratio. Then another methodology which is commonly used is called economic rate of return or ERR. So, here we calculate the discount rate by using an equation. So, here the discount rate that sets present value of all benefits equal to the present value of total benefits. So, otherwise we can identify this economic rate of return say are such that say the computed ERR is compared with some reference discount rate to know whether project is economically feasible. So, we can identify this rate of return or discount rate by using this equation sigma t is equal to 1 to n bt minus ct divided by 1 plus r to the power t, where bt is the benefits for the particular year, ct is the cost and r is the discount rate and t is the number of years. So, by solving this equation, if you the benefits and costs are known and the number of years are known, so then we can identify what will be the discount rate. So, when this say the whatever the discount rate which we are getting, we can compare with some reference discount rate. So, if whatever we are getting is say if computed say economic rate of return is greater than the project fund cost, so correspondingly what to the reference cost. So, then the project is economically attractive. So, that way we can identify what will be the discount rate say with respect to that particular project investment, and then from that we can identify whether the project is economically viable or economically attractive. Also, when we deal with the economic assessments, we can carry out a sensitivity of various parameters like sensitivity analysis, and then we can do a total financial analysis. So, all those things we can consider within the perspective of economic assessments. So, economic assessment procedure say we can list various steps like here what is given here. So, we can develop technical relationships and quantifying physical inputs and outputs. Then find monetary values and developing value flow tables, as I already mentioned, say value related to labor, equipment and materials or initial investment, etc. Then measuring the project worth, what is the worth of the project, so that we can identify. Then we can carry out sensitivity of various parameters, say for example, discount rate, benefit value estimate, cost assumptions, etc. So, that will also indicate how what is the economical viability of that particular project. So, especially when we deal with watershed management economical assessments. So, the agencies say like NGOs or other external agencies have to give appropriate assistance say for the assessments. So, like for establishing the technical relationships. So, since the most of the time the particular stakeholders or particular people may not be knowing all these issues. So, we have to give assistance in the economical assessments say for establishing technical relationship, identifying the costs and identifying the benefits. So, this is required as in most of the watershed areas. So, now what we discussed is the socio-economical aspects of watershed management plans or watershed management development programs, and then how to assess economically assess the watershed development projects or various alternatives by using various schemes, and then come up with an economically viable project or wherever the benefit is more than the cost or benefit cost ratio is more than 1, that particular scenario, particular alternative we can choose as far as the implementation is concerned. So, now as we discussed in the last lecture, say to implement particular watershed management plans, we need the various departments of the government, then the stakeholders, then the community participation, etc., as we discussed. So, with the participation from various agencies, we can see that now private sector has a major role to play as far as the various watershed management plans preparation, implementation and maintenance. So, private sector is very important. So, private sector participation is actually one way or another way people participation only. So, that means say the stakeholders within that watershed or say outside agencies like non-government organizations, NGOs. So, we can the NGOs now say have a major role in many of the watershed development schemes. So, say when we discuss the people participation, we have to see that say the participation can be at the development stage like a pre-project stage or planning stage or implementation stage, and then it can be for maintenance, evaluation, etc. So, the people participation or this private participation also can be in any of these. And then private sector like our NGOs, say we can use effectively the NGOs say in the watershed management plans as demonstrated in many case studies in India and other countries. So, the NGOs can motivate people to participate in all the stages like pre-project planning or implementation or maintenance and evaluation stages. And the NGOs can make them understand the knowledge inputs required by people. So, NGOs can from the beginning itself, pre-project itself, they can go to the people and then they can demonstrate, they can try to understand the people, make understand the people the inputs required, and then how they can do these particular watershed management plans. Then NGOs can organize education programs prior to program initiation. So, that way NGOs can play a major role in many of the watershed management plans. So, say when we discuss the NGOs or private sector participation, so we can use this organization in various way. Say it can be as in small informal groups or traditional community associations or cooperatives and trade unions, and to reach all sectors of the rural population concerned. So, we can have various types of organizations as far as the private sector participation is concerned. And then say this private sector participation that we can use to encourage governments to adopt methods to help these various organizations like NGOs to become self-sufficient, or the cooperatives like the Amul cooperatives, or these cooperatives are formed with the support of the government, and then now say now it has become so big that they can control the milk production in at various states like that. So, that is the advantage of say like private sector participation or cooperatives and trade unions. So, then to change administrative and budgetary procedures to facilitate hand over to the local level of powers and tasks involved in decision making, tax collecting and expenditure. So, once the project level implementation comes and then executions and say maintenance is concerned, NGOs can play, or private sector can play a major role. And also to set up local planning consultation bodies which will comprise representatives of the people, organizations, NGOs and other authorities have to help in decentralizing decision making. So, that way the private sector participations or NGOs can play a major role in many of the watershed management schemes or plans. So, when we discuss about the role of NGOs in watershed developments, so the success of watershed developments depends on working out collective protocols of equitable and sustainable use of surface water and groundwater. So, as far as water is concerned, we have to develop protocols for equitable distribution, equitable sustainable use as far as surface water and groundwater are concerned. Then bringing together scientists, economists and farmers in all this, so that way NGOs can help. Then involvement of community and private sectors. So like private landowners, they can say NGOs can bring all this together. So role of NGOs in watershed development is very important. So it can be either pre-project or a planning stage or implementation maintenance stage. All stages NGOs can play a major role. So it can be for creation of awareness, social mobilization, capacity building and training, as we have seen in many of the case studies which we discussed in the previous lectures. So that way NGOs have a major role to play in watershed management, say in all stages. So NGOs roles can be used to improve the effectiveness of project delivery, to empower village communities to take control of the projects like processes and outcomes, then to improve the levels of transparency and participation of communities, to facilitate the learning process of different partners at different levels based on objective assessment of field experience. Then NGOs can join the government sector or international agencies, so that say they can play a major role in getting the funds from the government or from various international agencies, and then utilization of that fund for particular say watershed management plans or in particular areas. So there are various agencies say who funds for watershed related projects like United Environmental Program, Food and Agriculture Organization, IFAD, World Bank, USAID, CARE, Oxfam, SIDA, ICRISAT, etc. So we can see that if you look into various third world countries like India and other countries, we can see that number of NGOs are working in this area. They are doing a very positive role. They are doing very actively involved in the watershed management plans. Say they are bringing funds from various agencies in watershed development projects, and then they are getting involved with the people in the planning stage to implementation and maintenance of that particular project in particular area. So that way there is a big role to play by NGOs in the watershed management plans. So if you look into the history of the watershed management developments in India, from 1980s the role of NGOs became increasingly important in the development sector in India. So last 30-40 years we can see that a number of NGOs are working in this area. So NGOs have the ability to bridge, as demonstrated, NGOs have the ability to bridge gap between people's needs and available resources and services. Then several projects implemented by NGOs have demonstrated their ability for new approaches and techniques for mobilizing local economics. So what we can see that in many locations, many agencies like ICRISAT, then Gramin Vikas, Panchayat, so like that various NGOs have played a major role in the watershed development plans, watershed management plans. So as a partner in the commonly shared visions, NGOs have adopted a new role in operationalizing the implementation of regional watershed management policies at the local level. So if the central government or state governments or say various authorities make plans, so NGOs can play a major role in modifying those plans, and then also say implementing these type of plans at local level. So the NGOs role are essential in local coordination and education. Then also this makes NGOs the nuclei for a successful watershed management plans. So as if we critically analyze various watershed management plans going at various locations in India or other countries, we can see that NGOs are playing a major role. They are the nuclei of successful watershed management plans. So, what we are discussing is about the private sector participation and the role of NGOs in the watershed development plans and watershed management plans. So, now another issue what I want to discuss here is gender issues. So, most of the watershed management plans, now we can see that last few decades the role of women have become very active. So, gender sensitive approach is very much essential in watershed management plans. So, watershed management initiative that exclude women as stakeholders ignore half the population, decreasing the efficiency and effectiveness of actions promoted. Use of a gender approach in dealing with the socio-environmental dynamics of watershed can open avenues and opportunities for achieving equity between women and men by considering their unique interests, demands and expectations. A gender sensitive approach to watershed management emphasizes affirmative actions to address women disadvantaged positions and conditions in many societies. So, we can see that women are the the women are taking, say, especially for household purposes, they are bringing water, they are very much actively involved in farming and all other activities. So, that way we have to consider the role of women in the watershed management plans. So, the women constitute more than 50% of the world population. Women play a pivotal role in agriculture development and the management of natural resources, as I already mentioned. So, their involvement is indispensable for the effective implementation and equitable distribution of the benefits of watershed management. So, we should get their opinion, their in the planning stage itself, and then they should be also get involved in the various execution and implementation and maintenance. So, managers of community natural resources and how they have learned to protect these resources in order to preserve them for future generations. So, we have say when women are say there in these schemes, we can see that most of the projects become more sustainable. So, they have extensive knowledge, experience and common sense in use and management of natural resources like water, land and then various issues are concerned. Then women often oversee, say they are looking after water, food, fuel and fodder requirements of the family and cattle. So, that way it is always essential we have to take care their viewpoints. So, women also use natural resources for economic activities, building and repair work, crops and food processing. So, that way we can see that women role is very important in watershed development plans. So, it is clear that poverty alleviation can be ensured through a watershed development program only when women have a stake in decision making, so that their basic needs are met and they can have better control say in the watershed development projects, its maintenance and its sustainability. So, most of the watershed projects whatever which were successful, if we critically analyze, we can see that when women have participated considerably and then their opinions were taken care and then they were there in the implementation and the maintenance, then most of these projects are very much successful. So, that way we can see that women participation is very important in the water development projects. So, now before closing, let us go through a case study. So, this is the equity in community based sustainable development, a case study in Western India. The case study area is Hivre Bazar in Nagpur, Nagar Taluk in Ahmednagar district in Maharashtra, India. So, the watershed area is about 9.77 square kilometer. Main occupation of the people in this area is agriculture. So, out of this 977 hectares, so 795 hectares is cultivable. The average annual rainfall in the area is only 579 millimeters. So, that way this is a semi-arid region, and this whatever available rainfall is through erratic way and uneven distribution. So, the principal form of irrigation in the village is well irrigation, open wells, which are dug well. So, the population in 2001 was about 1150. So, here as far as land distribution is concerned, 27% are marginal landholders, 39% medium or small land holding, and about 1/3 people are landless in this watershed area. So, the details are taken from this paper by Priya, which is published in Economic and Political Weekly in 2006. what are the problems of this watershed? Some of the important problems I have listed here. So, in the 1970s, this particular watershed was the economical activities or the agricultural activity was very low. So, as I mentioned, it was a semi-arid area. Water for irrigation was scarce, and women had to walk long distance to fetch drinking water. So, this resulted in low agricultural productivity, and most one kharif crop, typically bajra, could be managed, and sometimes jowar in the rabi season. So, mainly only one crop were used to be there before these watershed projects were implemented. So, people used to go out for job, since there were no sufficient employment opportunities within the area. So, the villages were under the influence of alcohol addiction and gambling, which resulted in frequent fights, and the village became notorious in the region in the 1970s. So, in 1980s, a group of youngsters under the leadership of Popat Rao Pawar came together, and they formed an NGO called Yashwant Agricultural Rural and Watershed Development Agency. This was set up in 1993, and a scheme began to be implemented from 1994. So, the watershed development was derived from the community initiative in watershed development. So, they put a role model of elegance in the implementation of this project. So, they were keeping 5 important principles as far as the watershed development intervention is concerned. Restriction on free grazing was not allowed, ban on tree felling, so tree felling was totally banned, ban on alcohol, adoption, family planning, and then voluntary labor for the implementation of various projects. So, these were the unique features of this particular watershed implementation or watershed project. Village was divided into 3 micro watershed, the first with about 612 hectares, second with about 123 hectares, and third with 241 hectares. And then various interventions were done. The principal watershed work constructed include continuous contour trenching, tree plantation, then contour bunding, nala bunding, like 5 important nala bunding has been done. Then 2 percolation tanks and 5-story bandaras were constructed in this particular watershed. So, this work were all done in a span of about 4 years by this NGO under the leadership of Popat Rao. So, then when this, what are the effects of this, when it was studied, the impacts were analyzed at the beginning of 2000. So, there was a huge change what has taken place within this watershed. So, we can see that the water availability and water potential has increased drastically. So, especially milch animals like cows and buffaloes, people started owning, and the milk production has increased more than tenfold in the area, and now village has its own dairy cooperative. So, this particular village, so that were the important impacts. Then there was increase in the level of water in the wells, and that led to more lands becoming irrigated within the area, with the results that both intensity and pattern of cropping have changed, resulting in higher incomes. So, instead of one crop, people have started 2 crops, and as sufficient water were available to the people. That way then there were a lot of employment, increased demand for labor and wage. Laborers no longer have to go outside other places in search of work. So, reverse migration started with all these initiatives. So, both the quality of the technical watershed works and the resulting positive socio-economic changes have now been widely acknowledged all over the world in this particular particular role model like Religions in the this particular watershed area. So, some of the important lessons learned based upon the this studies, Hirve Basar experience stands out not only in terms of its equity outcome, but also in terms of improvement in livelihoods and the impact on the sustainability. The measure to attenuate the negative impact of the ban on grazing, the rules about use of water, and the careful targeting of watershed plus measures have been particularly critical in this particular watershed. So, some of the inequalities considered inherent to watershed development projects can be partially remedied by local level initiative as demonstrated in this area. So, local problems were sorted out locally itself when the people came together as an NGO and then when the projects were implemented. So, that way we can see the success of this particular project by considering the social impact, social effects, economical aspects and the environmental aspects. So, these are some of the important references used for today's lecture. Finally, say a few questions, tutorial questions. Why we need economic assessment of watershed projects? Explain major techniques of economic assessment, how we can effectively assess the economic impacts of watershed projects. From the literature, critically study the economical impacts of watershed development projects. Then a few self-evaluation questions. What is the importance of socio-economic analysis of watershed management projects? How to do socio-economic assessment for watershed projects? Discuss the role of private sector in watershed development projects. Why gender issues important in watershed management projects? And what are the important socio-economic components of watershed development projects? What are the important techniques used for economic assessment of watershed projects? Describe the role of NGOs in watershed management projects. Discuss women role in watershed development projects. So, all these questions you can answer by going through today's lecture. So, finally, one unsolved problem. So, for your watershed area, critically study the various implemented and proposed watershed development management plans. Using benefit cost ratio method, carry out an economical assessment of the implemented and proposed watershed management plans. Critically evaluate various watershed management plans like water harvesting measures or irrigation projects or belt irrigation, canal irrigation, etc., and economically compare each schemes in terms of benefit cost ratio. So, this also you can try to do by going through today's lecture. So, today what we discussed was the social aspects, economical aspects, then gender issues and role of NGOs in watershed development plans. So, now say further we will say discuss the integrated development and water legislation and policies as far as watershed management plans in the next lecture. Thank you very much.